You're recording too, right? Because a number of my clients actually asked for copies. I've been giving out the copies of the last one I did for the Robin Rubin Center. So.
Yep, we are live right now. So
I will let everyone in at 12:03.
Oh, okay, then I'm going to start it. Okay, I'll start like right after that. Okay.
I didn't expect it would turn into a patient education thing, but it did. So all my patients, I'm like, you should see this video, this talk I did, and I'll like send it to them.
Sarah, you can go ahead, and it looks like some people are already in. If you want to go ahead and let folks in.
That's going to be a problem.
We're all used to it.
She's going to be part of this. I just became part of this. You are going to stay right here with me. Okay, hello, hello. Hello, everybody. I have a little puppy joining me today. Sorry about that, but keep her from barking. Hello, and welcome to the New Year Wellness Series, packed with meaningful guidance on spiritual, relational, emotional, nutritional, physical, and mental wellness. I'm Robin Rubin, founder of the Robin Rubin Center for Happiness and Life Enhancement. This center is housed in the Sandler School of Social Work within the College of Social Work and Criminal Justice at FAU. We offer weekly wellness programming free of charge and conveniently online. Students, faculty, staff, friends, family are all welcomed and encouraged to attend all of our calendar events, which include meditations on Tuesdays and Fridays, as well as special events like this one. The Robin Rubin Center for Happiness and Life Enhancement is pleased to co-sponsor this series with our friends at the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health at FAU Medicine. Integrative health is a holistic, patient-focused approach to healthcare and wellness. At the Marcus Institute, their physicians treat the whole person by examining everything that makes up a patient's health, including factors that can lead to disease, affect nutrition, exercise, and stress. Ultimately, patients and physicians are partners in healing and wellness. We're posting links in our chat now to invite you to learn more about the Robin Rubin Center and the Marcus Institute and make plans to join us in the near future. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's wellness expert, Dr. David Wohlsifer. He is a clinical instructor at the Sandler School of Social Work, a psychotherapist and founder of the Boca Raton Center for Psychotherapy. Dr. Wohlsifer earned his Master's of Social Work degree at the University of Pennsylvania, his Master's of Healthcare Administration from St. Joseph's University, and his Ph.D. in Human Sexuality from the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality in San Francisco. He did his postgraduate work at the University of Pennsylvania Perelman School of Medicine Center for Cognitive Therapy, where after completion, he retained a position as a psychotherapist and clinical educator for several years. Dr. Wohlsifer is a licensed clinical social worker in Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, and Washington. And he's also a Florida certified sex therapist with nearly 30 years of experience in clinical practice. Honestly, that's only about half of his extremely impressive bio. So I invite you all to learn more about Dr. Wohlsifer's experience and qualifications via his FAU faculty bio. David, thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. Do me a favor, say hi to me in the chat box so everybody's familiar with how to use the chat. I'm Dave. I'll be your speaker. That's basically what Robin had to say. And thank you to my parents who paid for everything that she listed. So I'll give them that shout out too. So hello. I see we got some FAU students and alums in the room, some of my friends, thank you. I'm going to bring out my brief PowerPoint. And I want to make sure everybody can see it. You can all see my PowerPoint. I like an excuse to put an owl in anything. As a professor, I'm finding myself admitting people to the Zoom. Should I not be doing that? I'm like in professor mode where I keep doing that. I'll let you guys do that. And I see that Robin and Susan have dogs with them, which I like. It's good to have dogs. And I'll go over today's talk. I'm going to have periodic times where I ask people to participate. So if people could take a moment and find the raise your hand prompt. Does everybody see where the raise your hand prompt is? If you go on Zoom, use the raise your hand prompt. Robin, can you say where you found yours? Because it's probably a little different on mine.
Sure. It's in the little button that has the smiley face and it says reactions, and you click on it, and on the bottom it says raise hand.
Okay, great. So when we have times when I do ask for audience participation, I'd like you to raise your hands. I also get bored of hearing myself talk. So I'll get us going. Hello, Talia, welcome back. So today I'm going to talk about couples. I have to tell you that working with couples is probably one of my favorite things to do. I find it very sacred when a couple brings their relationship to me. There's something I honestly find humbling. I'm awestruck, and it's actually moving to me that somebody would bring their relationship to me and that their relationship becomes my patient. It means a lot to me. It means an awful, awful lot to me when I see people as couples. Today for this talk, I'm referring to couples simply as adult romantic pair bonds. They might be legally married or not. They might be together 6 months or 70 years. I want to be inclusive. I'm just going to ask, can everybody mute? I want to be inclusive. So this is heterosexual couples, gay couples, lesbian couples, as well as couples who don't identify with any binary gender identity. I don't use terms like marriage or marital counseling because I think it excludes unmarried couples. So you'll hear me say couple therapy and couple counseling, but I'm referring to all kinds of couples. Even people who might have just met a few weeks ago, they're still a couple. And like I said, working with couples, one of my favorite things to do. I found this cartoon, which I do give my citation for in the end. I remember when this first happened, the pandemic, I was March 13th was the last day, 2020, that I saw people in my office. And I remember saying to one of my family members, this will be over in a week. I thought of it as a snow day from having lived up north. I was so wrong. We're still experiencing the pandemic constantly. I truly couldn't imagine. And I thought this cartoon of a couple was rather cute. He says to her, remember when we thought the pandemic was going to only last a couple of weeks? How many of you can relate to this? By the way, they've ruined their wall. Can I see with the show of hands, how many people can truly relate to when's it going to end? I thought it would never go this long. Right? Maybe a little further. I've always loved the Muppets a lot, and so I wanted to have an excuse to bring the Muppets into this talk, and Piggy and Kermit are one of my favorite couples, along with Ernie and Bert. So I had to bring in Piggy and Kermit. And help me with this. When do you think couples are functioning at their best? And in couples therapy, we often say when they're good enough. We say no relationship is perfect, but they need to be good enough. And it's a simple answer. Can I get a volunteer or two? When do you think couples are functioning at their best or good enough? Go ahead, Rob.
I think when they are very respectful of each other and they are learning and growing together.
That's beautiful. Good. I agree. Learning and growing. I'm writing it down together. And with that, your husband just entered the room. Somebody else has their hand up. Victoria, good afternoon.
Hi. I think when they actually listen to each other without interjecting or assuming they know what, completing each other's sentences, etc.
But actually pausing and hearing each other.
Assuming they know the outcome of this, initiating this conversation, assuming they know where it's headed when you might not know. You need to listen.
Excellent. Let me have 2 more volunteers. When do you think? Talia.
Hi.
Hello, my fellow Philadelphian. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you? It's so good to
Good
see
to see you.
you. I think they're functioning at their best when they think they're functioning at their best. And
That's great, because it's different for every couple, isn't it?
yeah.
Okay. And let me get one more volunteer. When do you think couples are functioning at their best? Andrea, good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi.
I think that when they are handling the challenges that life throws at them and still able to laugh with each other and get through those challenges.
Excellent. And COVID might be one of those, right?
I would think so.
So I have the pleasure of telling all of the volunteers, you're all right, which is something we all don't, you're all correct. I'm going to read back: respectful, learning and growing together, listening to each other when it's working for them and when they're handling the challenges that life throws at them and rolling with them. All of these fall under an umbrella term that I'm going to call attunement. They all relate. To me, attunement is emotional harmony, and I think it's a key component of couple wellness. Now, from a perspective of interpersonal neurobiology, the way two brains come together, or more than two brains, one describes bonded partners as attuned to one another. They feel a sense of emotional harmony. I find this term, this is Mona Fishbane's work, moving. Think of this: two people come together, and when they're doing it their best, which is simply good enough, they feel a sense of harmony. Like learning together, listening to each other, handling challenges together. It all fits, right? They feel felt by one another. And that phrase means so much to me. They feel felt by one another. I think Victoria said, when they're able to listen to each other. And this is really important: when they can turn to one another for affect regulation, are soothing in times of stress. I remember when I was very young, I had a job and we all got laid off. And I noticed that everybody was calling their spouse as the layoffs were happening. And I thought, what good is this? And then I realized it was calming them all down. Am I making sense so far? The key component to couple wellness is emotional harmonies. Partners may experience ruptures and repairs, and this can happen throughout the day. Partner one thinks partner two is listening to them and they realize they have had a headset on and they get annoyed. You say something and your partner has that moment of silence and you're like, are you listening to me? We have these ruptures and repairs all day, but are you able to reattune and get back to a sense of harmony? Relationship discord becomes more acute, more problematic when people can't get back on track, when they can't reattune. So think of this. I hope I'm making sense. There's a harmony that exists between partners. They feel felt by one another, like they matter to each other, like they have each other's backs, and they can calm each other down. All of us know what it looks like when a couple escalates each other, right? When it gets out of control and they can't bring it down. So this is the opposite. Can I answer any questions before I go a little further? Think of this as the basis for this work. So you got two people in a relationship and now you've locked them in with COVID. You've locked them in. And to understand attunement, I go back to my best source, which is Winnie the Pooh. And there's a beautiful example from Winnie and Piglet that I'll read to you that I think is the best example. I don't think they were a couple, but they were certainly a pair bond. Piglet sidled up to Pooh from behind, and Pooh, he whispered. Yes, said, yes, Piglet, nothing. And it always actually makes me well up when I read this. Taking Pooh's paw, I just wanted to be sure of you. Take a moment and read that. I think this should be in every single wedding vow exchange. That people together should feel the ability to be sure of one another. He doesn't want to talk to him. I don't even know their genders, but Piglet doesn't even want to talk to Pooh, doesn't have anything to say, but just wants to know that he's there. And I think all the people who volunteered, that's what you communicated, a sense of there-ness in your partner. I wanted to bring trivia into this, and for its sense of history, could I get a volunteer? Those of you around my age, who is this couple? Go ahead, Robin.
I love them, Sonny and Cher.
Right? Yeah. And I don't know if it worked out so well between them, but I think their song, I Got You, Babe, is one of the best examples I've ever seen of attunement. I mean, look at the lines. They say we're younger, we don't know, we won't find out until we grow. I don't know if it's true because I got you and baby, I got you. When you think of this song and when you feel the music behind it, I actually think it's one of the best examples of couple attunement and togetherness. They say our love won't pay the rent. Before it's earned, our money's all been spent. We don't have a pot, but we've got a lot. And I think when couples are at their best, they often feel a sense of value between them that surpasses everything. And that's a backbone to life. I mean, look at those last lines. They have nothing. They have each other. It's worth a lot. And then I had to put the rest of the song in because it's just kind of fun. My technology skills are limited, so I couldn't play it, and it's probably bigger than the talk. Does everybody feel like they know what I mean by attunement now? I mean, I use very good references. I'm glad I got a PhD, Winnie the Pooh, Sonny and Cher. Things are going well over here. There was a great study done, and so I've got to be somewhat of an academic and look at a study. How has the pandemic affected your relationship? I actually tried to see if the pandemic led to more babies. I lived most of my life in Philadelphia and New York. And when there were snowstorms, there were always more babies born 9 months later when we would get snowed in. There was actually a baby dearth, not a baby boom, brought on by the pandemic. And it made me wonder about couples. So there were less babies produced during the pandemic than we thought, which made me wonder, were people getting along less? But let's look at these statistics. How has the pandemic impacted your relationship? Have you experienced any of the following while living with your partner during the pandemic? 40% of people said boredom. 28% said too much time together, which I thought was lower than I would have expected. 21% said extended family issues. 21% said mental health issues. 20% said disagreements over safety issues, like going out, do we not go out? 19% experienced financial distress. This was lower than I thought too. 14% experienced disagreements over child-related issues. 11 substance abuse, 7% other. 7% other, and then none of the 10% other, and then none of the above, 31%. Any thoughts on this? What do people think when they see this? Let me check the chat. A lot of you guessed Sonny and Cher. I want to comment on something Ashley Zantop put in the chat. You love that normalizing the small ruptures. It's not relationships are supposed to be perfect. It's how you handle challenges and reconnect. Absolutely. You never measure a couple on how well they get along. You measure how do they weather ruptures. When two people get along well, life is easy, right? It's what do you do when life throws that first curveball at you? And it could be a huge ball or it could be a marble, but how do you cope when it comes at you? And I'm sure many of you also remember the Sonny and Cher show. So let's move a little further. Can we name this film? It's a couple not at their best. Popular film, 1987. Anyone recognize it? No, not quite, Bonnie. This is War of the Roses. Yeah, Christy got it. War of the Roses. Listen to this huge mistake I made in high school. I had a very close friend and her parents split up. I'll be honest, her father had an affair. To make her feel better, I took her to the movies and I took her to see this. She walked out sobbing. We're still friends though. It's about a man and a woman who buy a beautiful old house and basically destroy each other. They could become completely unattuned, destroy each other, renovating it. And is it okay if in the end, they basically die. And it's the saddest scene. He goes to touch her as they're lying dying and she pushes his hand off. COVID represented a risk to couples attunement. Now, what brings couples back together? According to the School of Relationship Science, known as Communication Theory of Resilience, couples who focused on 5 habits can weather hard times like the pandemic more easily. And let's go over those 5 techniques for couples weathering the pandemic. The first one is maintaining some kind of normalcy with their routines. That when you're stressed and something hits the family, you need to maintain some kind of normalcy with your routine. Let me have a few volunteers. What does this look like? It's very simple, but very healthy. If you could raise your hands, what do you think this could look like for couples? Go ahead. No one's volunteering? So go ahead, Rob.
No, somebody wrote in the chat box, dinner at the same time every day.
Absolutely.
Still doing, when when you're going through hard times, still, getting together with family, seeing your children together, doing some of the normal things that you do together, whether it may be going to the gym together, getting up and
Excellent. Andrea, jump on. And I see what you put in the chat.
Now, I
You're
was just going to say, in my house, it's getting up, at a normal time and exercising and whatever that looks like in a normal day for
And
us.
these are simple things, but they're the backbones of life. So you take, let's say you and your husband, and let's say there's a stress and you're no longer going to bed at the same time or getting up at the same time. You're going to be completely, and if that's what you're used to, it's going to throw you off kilter, right?
Right. And even though the routine may look different because of the pandemic, for a lot of us, it was going out and walking and just.
Denise just put that in the chat. Neighborhood walks, the things that you do. Thank you. Sarah.
Yes, I was going to say, I was once invited to remember what brought you together in the first place. And that might be decades ago, but sometimes just going back to the very beginning and remembering what you enjoyed, liked, found in common with one another, and going back to the basics can be really helpful, especially during challenging times when there's so much noise or crisis, around you.
I want to hear a funny story. My mentor told me that whenever a couple is having a really bad fight in your office, ask them that question. How did you meet? And they'll instantly start to romanticize it, even if it wasn't so good. I'm going to look into the chat for a moment and just read some things. Victoria writes, saying good morning and hello and goodbye and sharing plans, saying good night, like basic courtesies. Neighborhood walks, watching a Netflix show to wind down every night. I think when couples have their shows, hey, the shows are good. It also brings them together when they have that little plan, like, are we going to watch our show tonight? Asking how I can help. Bonnie writes, date night, even if we had to stay home. Like, how do you make a date night? Actually, I hope you don't make me share this. I remember you once posted something about an at-home dance party on Facebook. And I thought it was the coolest thing. I didn't do it, but I thought it was the coolest thing that you and your partner did. You had an at-home dance party. I think it was New Year's of 2021 or 2020. I remember things. Denise writes, I saw so many couples walking in my neighborhood, and that togetherness, and actually walking is really good for your brain because it gives you bilateral brain stimulation. The woman who invented EMDR, I believe, did it while watching people walk. She recognized that hitting both sides of the brain. Francine Shapiro was actually healthy. Hey, Raina, welcome back to FAU. Raina writes, even when we can't stand each other, we still say, I love you, walking in and out of the door. And Victoria doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sarah, your hand's up, please.
No, it was from before, sorry.
Okay, it's cool. Another one, talking to their partner as well as sympathetic others about their concerns. One of the most dangerous things for couples, I think, is when they don't have people outside of them to turn to, like support networks outside of the couple. This is a particularly huge issue for heterosexual couples because, and I'm talking in generalizations here, women tend to have bigger networks than men. And a lot of men get their networks through their wives. And so what happens is when they're having trouble, she has who to turn to. She has her friends, she has maybe mom, sister, people to turn to. He is often isolated, and men sometimes we're not always great about talking about our problems with other men. And if he talks about them with other women, that could become a problem in itself. That's bigger than this talk. So it's really, really important that partners have people to talk to during hard times, reminding themselves of who they are and what they believe. How does somebody do this? It sounds huge, but what does it mean to remind yourself of who you are and what you believe? Victoria?
I think this one can be really difficult having.
It's huge, I think.
When
right.
you're, yeah, and it may have something to do with time or not, but having been married for almost 3 decades and gone through life and all that, you need to remember who you actually are without your spouse so that you can, and to do that can be kind of soul searching. So that's not an easy question for me to actually answer, but I feel like
it's not an easy question, but it's a good discussion point you're bringing up.
Yeah, and I think you kind of go through cycles in life. Like I feel like I go through cycles in life when I know exactly the answer. And then there are other times when I question it. So,
And I think part of the human experience, and I know from my own cultural tradition, there's a joy in questioning, and questioning leads to knowledge and not just accepting. I got a little note from my moderator that I gotta speed my time up here a little bit. I was afraid my talk would be too short. I think this also goes back to values, that when couples are faced with a challenge that they need to say, what is it we believe in? What do we want our lives to look like? Reframing their situation in more positive or different ways. All right, so we're locked in. How do we make the best of it? Maybe it could be fun. Maybe this is a chance. I had a friend and she was a single mom for most of her life, and then later in life met a wonderful husband. And she said to me, she's a therapist, and she said one of the most beautiful things about the pandemic was it was the first time in her life she could truly be home, because she had worked her whole life. It forced her to be home with her husband in a really positive way. And I think this is something we've all been trying to do, focus on how good things will be when the crisis is over, regardless of the crisis. What could healing look like? Let me go to my next slide. Some additional strategies couples can employ: make time for each other. And we touched on this. Plan date nights, work on communication, while at the same time set boundaries. Make sure you carve time alone, and make sure each person has privacy and space, because they're both essential. There's a funny saying, I married you for life, but not lunch. I hear retired people use this all the time. I married you for life, but not lunch. That it's important to have your own time and your own space. And I'm just checking the chat. I'd be happy to share them, Victoria. Practicing mindfulness, being kind and patient in their interactions with each other, and checking on the other person's mental health. It's very important, I think, especially when people have been together a long time, that they remember that's another person outside of you, to know where you end and your spouse begins. I think it's so problematic when people forget that we are two who have become one, but we're still two. There's so much romantic language, particularly around weddings. We have flames come together, we each light a candle and then we light them together, that we don't forget our separate candleness and the value of that. I never sought, I've been married almost 3 decades as well too, and I never sought to marry a clone of me. I think I'd hate it. But what's it like to see the differentness of another? One of my mentors, who unfortunately passed, David Snarch, who wrote The Marriage Crucible, said relationships are human growth machines when you let them be. That when relationships are done well, they're actually human growth machines. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing to say, that it's a thought I want to leave you with. I'm going to take a quick glance in the chat and just, what was the 5th point again, Christy? Let me go back to it. Refocus on how good things will be when the crisis is over. Tell all of these things to your partner, Christy. Sarah, the recording will be available if anybody would like a copy. Sarah, should I send you my slides if somebody wants them? Would that be helpful, or is that beyond the scope of the?
I haven't fielded that request before, but I know we definitely have the recording available.
What I'll do is I'll put my email in the chat, and if you'd like the slides, just write me.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, no, I was going to talk, but I wasn't sure. Okay, there we go. Perfect. That's what I was looking for. So David just put up a slide that said questions. So before we take your questions, which I bet you there's a few, we're adding a link in the chat box for just a very brief survey. It will take you 10 seconds. Please take 10 seconds to share your feedback about what you heard today. Your feedback is really important to us. So it will go in the chat box right now. Just go ahead and do it.
I put in there that some people put in the chat to ask me to email you from the chat. I can't email you from the chat, so please, I'll re-put my FAU email out there, and I'm happy to email you this.
Okay. So we're probably done with the survey, I'm thinking. So let's dive into some questions.
Rachel, to your question, please email me and I'll be glad to email you the PowerPoint. And my email's up in the chat.
Okay, let's go to the chat. Okay.
I'm going to stop my share so I can look at people.
Great. Okay. So yes, we'll make that available. There's his email. Okay, questions, peeps.
There was a great question a little earlier in the chat about what if a partner is not open to receiving feedback or therapy for mental health issues.
Oh, allow me to address that. Let's frame that in the context of the talk today. To me, that's a break in attunement. If I'm not open to my partner, I'm not attuned to their needs. So that makes it problematic. And I think the couple then needs to think about, you're at an impasse. You're at a complete impasse if they're not open. Because unopenness means I'm not attuned to your needs as a partner. Okay.
Other questions? Other questions? Anybody have a question? Question. You know, I think one of the things, sometimes, here we go, Victoria, sometimes breaking down the lack of attunement may take too much energy. What do you do then? Breaking down the lack of attunement may take too much energy. What then?
So, Victoria, can you unmute and tell me what you mean by breaking down the lack of attunement?
Sorry, I was trying to type in as few words as possible. I just meant, it can be overwhelming when you look at what you think it might take to repair the relationship. So at what point do you say it's time or not? That question is always lingering. So
relationships are overwhelming, and sometimes I wonder how I've managed to have a cat. And I think that's true for all of us, let alone be married my whole life. And when do you know? Your question is
a loaded question. You don't need to answer it. I just
let
feel
me answer
like
there's an answer I gave somebody recently that I think the answer meant a lot to me. Does that make sense? It meant a lot to me when I said it.
Yes.
I think being in a relationship is an act of faith. What is faith in a higher power? It's a belief in its abilities. It's a belief in what it has to offer. And I have to think more about this, but I think a relationship means having faith in something. And sometimes we lose faith, and sometimes we can get our faith back. But I think being relational requires faith, a belief in something unseen. Making sense when I say that?
Yes, I think you nailed it for me. Thank you.
Good, and I'm writing on a post-it so I don't forget it. Thank you, and thank you for your question.
So I don't know, I just have a kind of a comment.
Yeah.
That I think about a lot with relationships. And my mom actually taught this to me, but this idea that what is the bigger intention? Everybody's going to have their ups and their downs and they're in, but is the intention to stay together or is the intention not? And if your intention is to stay together, your actions along the way are different than if in your head you're thinking this is never going to work. So if you're thinking I want to make this work, because at the end of the day, I'm a believer, because I'm the ultimate optimist, that if you want to make things work, there's a way to do it. Of course, unless there's some mental illness going on that can't be. Yeah, but I just always think about intention.
I like to think about the history of marriages too. For most of human history, we arranged our marriages. I have a daughter and Robin, you have a son, and our farms are next to each other. So if our kids marry, we'll combine our farms. I mean, you think about this, for most of human existence, marriages were arranged and they worked out pretty well. I've worked with couples in arranged marriages. They actually can work out pretty well. And they were short because we died by 30. I mean, think about this. My in-laws were married 69 years. That's longer than my father was alive. And so I think I think there's an optimistic part. And I think there are some relationships where sometimes ending is the right thing because life takes us in different journeys that aren't healthy for the individuals. And as an optimist myself, that always makes me feel bad to say. But I think there's truth to it. Am I addressing your point, Rob?
Yeah, I'm curious what you think about, somebody wrote here, marriage for love is recent.
It's true.
You know, I think it's so much more than love. And my mom also used to say, love is not what you say, it's what you do.
It's true.
And like, I love you, I love you. I mean, that doesn't have to have very much meaning, but like when I'm there for you, when I, you know, yeah, that's different. That's more to me love than I love you.
You know, I recently watched this. It was very good on Netflix. I think it was called Maid, M-A-I-D. And it was about a woman who was being abused. But he said, I loved you to her, but he treated her horribly. He didn't act loving. He didn't act loving at all. And I think anyone could say anything, and what do actions communicate? Yeah, Maid was outstanding.
Series is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it.
Talia, your
Yeah.
hand is up.
I have a question. How much of this do you think can be applied to people who are no longer together but still in relationship, like specifically for co-parenting or things like that?
I think all of it can be. You know, I often say when I work with a couple who is separating and they have children, I always remind them, you will be each other in each other's lives forever. If two people have had children together, even if they're no longer going to be partners, they will always be the parents of that child or those children. And it is healthy for them to have some kind of modicum of foundation to get along enough. And I think they need skills for that. And I think one of the unhealthiest things they could do is when the children get split in that and start fighting the parents fight. And I will tell you, when you see those kids, it causes them a lot of pain. So I think even for partners who are no longer together, they still need to be, I think friends is too generous. I think they still need to be family on some level to each other.
Absolutely. Susan says languages of love can be different for each partner. And I think that's a really good point. You know, what one person may look at as, oh, that means they love me. You know, another person will be like, not, you know, and I think that that's knowing what your partner thinks of as loving acts is really important. You know, are they acts of service? Are they touching or whatever?
Yeah, the four love languages, or are there five?
5. And to
5.
Robin's point, there's a really simple quiz that you can do online. It takes a few minutes and you can do it separately on your phones and then compare your answers to see what your love languages are and what your partners are, and then where you can kind of connect with each other by providing those love languages. And I just wanted to insert one thing before we move on. I think if we summarize it, when you're in a relationship, a partnership, and you are either the best version of yourself or supported to be on the journey of becoming the best version of yourself, is really indicative of a healthy dynamic.
Yeah, it's so true. Where your
So
partner
true.
wants to see you thrive. We've all seen relationships, and maybe some of us have been in relationships where one partner holds the other one down. They're intimidated, they're threatened. And that can be worked through, but if they're unwilling to do that or recognize it, it's destructive.
Just related to what you just said, David, there are some relationships where the person does hold the other person down, and that other person makes themselves small, you know, and isn't their best self because they're afraid to do that because it may, you know, insult their partner. You know, if I'm really who I am and I come into myself, then my partner is going to be threatened. And never, ever make yourself small so that somebody else feels, you know, good
And then
about
it becomes
themselves.
a destructive dance between the two of them, right? You tell me I'm less, then I make myself smaller, and then you keep making me less, but then I resent you for it and you resent me for it, and we're going nowhere, and we're so disattuned. We're never going to be Winnie and Piglet. That's my ideal of a couple today.
That's true. Okay, everybody, let's go. Any other questions? Questions? Let's see, did I miss anything?
I think we're on target with the trip. I'm going to put my email one more time in case people want anything.
Okay. So we are just about out of time. Oops, am I muted? Nope.
No, you're great.
We are just about out of time. So some quick notes before we go. Thank you for being here, particularly Dr. David. That's what his clients call him. That's what the students at FAU call him. By the way, he's like #1 professor at FAU. So that's what they call him, Dr. David. Please let people know in the chat where they can find more about you. He just put his email in the chat box. Number 2, mark your calendars for our next installment in the series next Wednesday, same time, same place, where we'll be talking about nutritional wellness and the power of a plant-based diet. We recommend creating a reminder on your calendar along with the access link. That way you can preserve the time and have a built-in reminder to have lunch and learn with us. You can find our access link in your email confirmation that you received when you registered for today's event. Like I said, same time, same place, same link. A big thank you to the Robin Rubin Center for Happiness and Life Enhancement and the Marcus Institute for Integrative Health at FAU Medicine. This fantastic series. I hope to see you all next Wednesday and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, David.
All right. Did we stop recording?
Not yet.
Is it just me and you?